Hi, this is Chris Claremont speaking to you from the offices of Nightwing Restorations, suggesting that you take a good listen to the Epic Marvel Podcast.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of the Epic Marvel Podcast Reading Club, in which we are reading one issue of Claremont's X-Men run every single day. And we are currently on week 20. That's what we're talking about today, the books from week 20. Nice to see people in the chat already, including JV and Exeter and Pillbox Hat. Love that avatar, Groucho Marx. And I'm sure some more will join in a little bit as well. But we have kind of an odd assortment of issues today, very random. And it's you can see from the schedule right here: Uncanny X-Men 192, X-Men Annual 8, X-Men in Alpha Flight 1 to 2, and Uncanny X-Men 193 through 195. This week's reading, bonus reading, included the last chapter of the Iceman miniseries, plus all of the Firestar miniseries, which was kind of her introduction into the Marvel universe, because she's a character that originally appeared in the cartoon series Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, and so now she's by this point is being brought into the MCU, and she appears actually in one of these issues of X-Men that we're going to talk about today. Other than that, the last bonus reading on Sunday, March 1st, was Power Pack number 12, which is the first part of a two-part story. With the second part is Uncanny X-Men 195. The Epic Collection really should have included both of those issues, Power Pack 12 and Uncanny, but it only included the Uncanny issue and gave us a little text recap at the top of the page above the cover to let us know what we missed. But it's kind of silly because it's not even one of those instances where the X-Men don't show up until the second part. No, that first part has Shadowcat and Nightcrawler playing a very prominent role. So yeah, you can see on the Epic Collection, it just has some words at the top here to let us know what we missed. But I would recommend people read the first part of that story, because not only is it essential to understand the context of the story here, it's just a good issue as well. And I love the Power Pack. I would love a Power Pack Epic Collection. I think that would be a lot of fun. Not sure how well it would sell, but it's a good series. James is here. He says, I had to miss last week for a work party, but I have to say I liked some of that material better than most people. The Rachel Celine stuff is very important for upcoming stories. That is true. And the Kulan Gath story is a fun and brutal little diversion, and it's important for Storm and Callisto's relationship. Yeah, well, just because it's important doesn't mean it's great, but I'm glad that you enjoyed them more than I did, that's for sure. This week also has a few clunkers in it. I'm gonna say it's been interesting because Axel Plates here, you have not missed anything so far. Just kind of doing my little preamble here. But no, it's interesting reading this book because out of context, these stories are okay. But when you're reading them like all in a row, and we've had banger after banger with the Cockrum stuff and John Burns' run, and the first part of Romita's run so far has been great. And all of a sudden we get to this volume, and it's not that, like, overall it just doesn't sit as high as the other ones. Might be my least favorite volume so far is this one, The Gift. But let's go through and talk about these issues. We're going to start with Uncanny X-Men number 192. And here is the cover for you. and that is not Warlock, one of the New Mutants. That is Warlock's father, Magus, and we're going to learn a little bit about the family history here in a little bit here. So yeah, same as usual. Look, how do you like Colossus's new outfit? He's got this red tunic, I guess. I used to be just bare chest, so you could see his silver chest, but he's kind of wearing this red thing now, and it's not my favorite. And I guess maybe it's just because I'm not used to it or whatever. The other costume is better, but it definitely reflects more of his Russian background, I guess, with the boots with those white straps on them as well. Just not as iconic as the stuff that his old costume, or even what he wears in Excalibur later on. Uh, yeah, not one of my favorite redesigns for his character there. This may seem like a familiar scene because it doesn't feel like that long ago, but it has to have been a bunch of issues back where the last issue that John Byrne did on X-Men was Colossus pulling a chain that was tied to a stump, trying to pull it out of the ground. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back because Byrne was trying to draw it like Colossus was lifting it effortlessly, and then Claremont went in and put some dialogue that made it seem like he was struggling. And Byrne was like, "Enough is enough. You're changing the meaning of my drawings one too many times," and he's out of here. But look at this. This one feels the same way. Colossus, though, I think he is struggling based on those motion lines there, and then he rips it out of the ground. And look at that. It's a huge thing he rips out of the ground. This was another one of those issues that's just kind of doesn't really have to do with the overall story, but it has a few cool character moments, um and it ties into what Claremont is doing over in New Mutants, which throughout all of these issues he ties back to New Mutants quite a bit. But Colossus is still beating himself up over what happened in the Secret Wars when he fell in love with one of the alien women there, and how he's treated Kitty, and she's supposed to be returning back from Japan anytime now. I love how the continuity fits right in there. The mini series, they didn't just do a mini series for the sake of mini series. It's like, no, they're off on their own adventure, and here it is chronicled in this book instead of being told in the pages of Uncanny. So I thought that was pretty cool. Nightcrawler's getting Nightcrawler's such a player. He flirts with everybody. He's even flirting with Callisto in a little later issue here. But he puts his foot in his mouth. Here's a cool little scene right here where there's a big flash of light, and I like how the colorist has just used a light yellow and a stark white background with no detail. Um, it looks better in the Epic collection actually because you can't see the paper on the other side like you can in this scan of this comic. I really like what they're doing here with Storm. It's interesting because when Sean Cassidy lost his powers, he took off and left the team, and he didn't even lose his powers; he was just injured, and he went to stay with Moira. But Storm's kicking around; she doesn't really have anywhere else to go. I mean, she will go in a little bit, but she's sticking around because X-Men has become her family. And so it's neat to see how she fits in, how she relates to everybody, um, even though she has no powers right now. What is her worth? What is her value? And at the meantime, we have a new person who's kind of joined the team, kind of not. They've never really made it official, like they made Kitty official, or even how they made Rogue official. She's just kind of been there. And I think a lot of that also happens over in the pages of New Mutants because Rachel shows up over there too. But here's a part of her history that we don't really know much about. And she's wearing this black costume with these spikes on it. And we saw this in the previous issue. But I like how they are kind of slowly peeling back the layers and just hinting and giving us little tidbits of what about Rachel's past and what she's been involved in and such. A lot of exposition in this on this page here as everybody gets reacquainted. And I like this page just because it's a shock, because Rachel never met the young Kitty Pryde in the Days of Future Past storyline, because that's because they swapped their bodies there. So that's cool. Sorry. Yeah. Um, did I have that mixed up? I think I said something. I can't remember what I just said. Rachel didn't switch the bodies. Old and young Kitty Pryde, or something like that. Anyway, here is the beginning of this story where we're meeting not Warlock, but his father, who's come to take control of, like, infect the planet or whatever. This is part of the Phalanx, which has a big story later on down the road. They have a very iconic look, and I think John Romita is very much a part of determining that look, because the way he does shadows and the way he does tech, it's really it fits perfectly with the Phalanx here, and it kind of fits right in. And this look has been adapted pretty much consistently through the years. I can't remember when the last time Phalanx has shown up. Anyway, they find that they are not really in a good match to take on this creature, and they all get infected. Now, here's a cool moment coming up with Rogue here, because she now, this is always the question: is do her powers only work with mutants? And we know that's not the case, because she absorbed Carol Danvers' powers, and Carol Danvers has alien powers because she's part alien herself. And so I guess yes, they can absorb alien powers, and that's what happens here, because she she always has to kiss the person. It's like, can't you just touch cheeks, or like take off your glove or something like that? Rub noses, but no, she has to give this alien a full on mouth to mouth. And then she starts to learn about the history. So this is kind of cool, a cool way to do that. But also makes her susceptible to being part of the hive mind of the phalanxes. Kind of nice, dark, moody coloring and or inking here. Something that I think we don't see a lot of from Dan Green, because he is usually a little bit more streamlined with his inks, but it's very much a sketchy look to these pages, which is kind of cool. And at the very end, Xavier gets knocked out. This page was kind of a little like, come on, Xavier, really? He says that there was just kind of too much noise going on, that he couldn't tell that that brick was going to hit him in the head. But it's like, I think that you're a little bit more powerful than that. I think this just happened for the sake of the story. But anyway, Xavier gets beaten up and then gets dragged away. So that's not good. And it says the next is the 100th issue of the new X-Men, but we're not going to get that for a couple hundred pages actually, because we have 4 double-sized issues in a row. So there was actually a lot of reading. It was the same number of issues, but it was almost twice as much reading as we would normally do, because of these double-sized issues. Which also means we're getting through this epic collection really fast. Okay, buckle up, people. Here's X-Men Annual number 8. This is possibly my least favorite annual or even issue of X-Men that we've read so far, because it is just nonsense. And doesn't help that it doesn't have a great artist on here. Yeah, JV knows where it's at. Oh, Exeter says he prefers Colossus's previous costume, but doesn't mind this one. Couple more people are joining the chat. Nice to see both of you. Yeah, so this annual, not only is it not relevant because it's just a story, which, I think they did this because it's like, well, we had really good response to Kitty's fairy tale, and we want to continue that, but they didn't have to. We especially didn't need it double sized, and we especially didn't need it with this artist here, which I don't know. These first few pages has a better inker than what comes up next. Um, but let's see if we can get a hold. Um, they're taking turns telling stories around a campfire, and it's Wolverine's turn, and he's telling a story that's supposed to be sort of an allegory for something that happened to him and Kitty in Japan in the miniseries, but I don't see it exactly. But anyway, um, the real story comes when Ilyana starts telling a story called "The Adventures of Lockheed the Space Dragon and His Pet Girl Kitty." And how come we don't have any credits here? Are they on the last page? Let me just check the credits because I just want to see who the inker is on this one here. So it's Steve Lealoha as the artist. That's it. No inkers credited, which means he was the inker. And that is interesting because he goes through a few different inking styles throughout this himself. Like you can tell, look at the shadow on Ilyana's face and the heavy brush strokes underneath her head. It almost has a Bill Sienkiewicz style of kind of very wild, very loose, big fat brushes and stuff. I mean, this first page here, even with the composition and stuff, looks like it's trying to mimic Bill Sienkiewicz a little bit. And maybe that was intentional. He was getting some very high acclaim on his work on New Mutants with the Demon Bear saga at this very time, actually. So it could be that they're like, you know what? Let's see if lightning strikes twice. It does not, because no one is the same as Bill Sienkiewicz. Matt says, I love comics and I usually don't complain about this, but the art was not my favorite. It lacked detail and it was just strange. Yes, just strange. That is a good way to put it. And Steve Lee Aloha, he's a good artist. There are other comics that I've read of his where, and I'm darned if I can remember what any of them are, but I've never had a problem with his artwork except for this one. And I don't, and the inker might make it, or maybe he's rushing through this whole thing, but just the proportions and like that face of Kitty right there. Kitty's supposed to be a child, like a younger child through this story here, and I don't know, just so strange. And then we get faces like this one up here where it's just a little bit off. And look in that one, two, three, in the fourth panel there with Kitty reaching her hand up. It's supposed to be that she's standing on the ground, but it kind of looks like she's flying. But it's supposed to be just a reflection on the ground, I think. And then the foreshortening on the arm. It's just we could go through every panel and pick apart. It's just not great. And they're trying to bring back some of the feeling of that old Kitty fairy tale, but they don't have a great story to go along with it. So it's just not a good issue. This is probably my least favorite issue that in the entire Claremont run so far. Um, yeah, some of these panels are cool. I like that one with the close up of Lockheed's face with the smoldering coming out of his jaw there. But then that Kitty Pride having her nose flicked on the last panel is just so strange. I don't know. Was he on Fables? He might have been. I mean, it was Mark Buckingham for the main story, but they'd always bring in special guests for little side stories every once in a while. And this would be something that he would be up to on Fables. So I wouldn't be surprised if his name showed up there. It would be right up his alley. I've I probably have read those issues. Maybe that's how I know his name. But so some cool ideas. Again, he's not a bad artist. He just isn't a great artist, if you know what I mean. Like this is a cool page with the different composition there, and this is one of the better looking pages overall. The faces look nice, shading is nice. But yeah, it's like all of a sudden we go from kind of nice rendering on the hair and the shadows in that bottom kitty, and then all of a sudden here it's like it's flat and boxy, and I don't understand why he's doing that. Hello, Lance. He says, yes, this issue was a drag. My brain tends to forget about the duds in Claremont's run until they're brought up again. Yeah, that's right. You're right. His inking looks like a different style at this point. Yeah, uh, it depends on the page. Every page seems to be a little bit different. And like, yeah, and even the faces. Look at some of these faces. The lack of detail in faces in that first panel compared to just the oddity of the other ones. Sometimes it looks good, sometimes it doesn't. It's just wildly inconsistent. So I'm just going to kind of plow through these because I really don't care to talk about them about this issue because it's just it doesn't need to be talked about. Mm, Bad body proportions on the White Queen there. And look at that third panel, no jawline, so it makes her neck look super fat. I mean, I know he's trying to be stylistic a little bit or something, but it just looks odd. And then the panel below that, the shadows make her lip stick out weird. I don't know. People are like, there are people out there that have the comments like all modern Marvel has terrible artists. They all suck. There's nothing like the classics. And it's like, man, have you seen this annual? Come on. Not all artists are bad now, and not all artists were good back then either. Um, the only relevant part of the conversation at the end was with Kitty and Peter. Yeah, there you go. Also was Trina Robbins' longtime partner. That makes a lot of sense because this style in some of these issues is actually very reminiscent to Trina Robbins. Trina Robbins, I think, is better. But you can definitely see the crossover between her art and this art in here. He was mostly the inker on Fables primarily. Yes, and I think that's how I know him primarily as an inker as well. He does a lot of inking. Believe it or not, I actually enjoyed this issue while I was reading it, but I absolutely agree with you about all the problems with it. Thanks. A bit amateurish, but I know they're always rushed, so who knows who fault it is. Yeah. Well, the thing about the annual though is it shouldn't be rushed because it's not like it has to have a specific. I mean, they set their deadlines, of course, but it's not on a monthly schedule. I don't believe it to be a lack of skill, but very inconsistent. Rushed makes sense. Yeah, and like I said, I've seen him do great stuff otherwise. So there have to be some outside factors, or he's trying a new style, like we talked about with Al Milgrom in the Kitty Pride and Wolverine series. Maybe that had something to do with it. There's got to be, or maybe he broke his hand and is in a cast. I don't know. Just joking. But yeah, okay, so the only relevant thing here is that Ilyana is using this story to try and talk to Kitty about what's going on with Colossus because Colossus is not um he's not being forthcoming with information on his own. And so one of let's see here what I can't remember what I wanted to say. So here's a panel or a page with the battle between Emma Frost and Kitty, and it reminds me because of especially because of the red background of the fight scenes that we saw like in Frank Miller's Wolverine miniseries, but definitely not up to the same caliber. Let's get over to the end here. So this last page, which has a wildly different inking style, it's actually interesting. The inking style for the very beginning and the very end has a specific look to it that makes it look different because it's the framing sequence. So I think in that sense, I like that he's changing up his inking style for that to make sure that we know that the story within the story is fantasy or whatever. A lot of annuals are basically tryout books for newer artists, so maybe that's the case here with Steve. Possibly. I don't know when his career started. Let's look it up and have a look here. Um, his work came to prominence in the 1970s. Worked primarily as an inker. Okay, so notable works: Spider-Man, or sorry, Spider-Woman. His career goes back to 1975. So by this point, he's already been working in the comic industry for a decade. So I don't think this is the fact that he is a newbie and they're giving this as a tryout book. So sorry, Sasmurf. Yeah, there goes my theory. Yeah. But anyway, they do have a nice little talk to talk where they kind of lay things out. Where are they at with their feelings and stuff? And they decide that they are going to just remain friends. And there's a little bit of closure there, although Colossus kind of keeps on bringing things up a little bit later. But that is that. The difference in quality between Annual 8 and Annual 9 is astounding. Yeah, there's no consistency in any of those for sure. It's all just whoever can do it. So yeah, very interesting. Okay, hold on a second here. I just have to text my wife. She sent me a text. It happens in the middle of live streams all the time. And usually I ignore them, but she asked a very specific question. So, okay, next up, X-Men and Alpha Flight, number 1 in a 2-issue limited series. And this was worth the price of admission. I enjoyed these 2 issues tremendously, and I think that, it was nice to see Bob Smith, um, with, and his art has changed quite a bit too. So Bob Smith, of course, we had, he had a run, or sorry, I'm saying Bob Smith. Why I'm saying Paul Smith. And Bob Wyacek. That's why I'm saying Bob. I'm combining both of their names. Paul Smith with inks by Bob Wyacek. And Paul Smith had a short run on X-Men, which people really loved. He has a very different style because he's a lot more simplistic, a lot more streamlined, a lot more minimalist. And then he left the book, and that's when John Romita or Cockrum came back for a little bit, and John Romita Jr. took over. And then we have and then we have this, a two-part story, both double-sized issues. They could have made this a 4-issue limited series, but for whatever reason, they decided just to make it 2 double-sized issues. And it's called The Gift. This is where the Epic Collection gets its name. On an important note, this story takes place before the events depicted in Alpha Flight 25 because a notable character roster change happens. But they explain that in the issues. And we get the return of Cyclops. I can't tell you how much I've missed Cyclops. I really want him to come back and join the team, but I know that he's not going to. So, not for a long time at least, because X Factor is right around the corner. But it is nice to see him show up and see what he's up to. And he's been living the good life as a commercial pilot in Yukon and across the northern Canada with Madeline Pryor, who is a pilot as well, or who is a pilot. So we're introduced to an odd cast of characters here that we don't really know. Obviously, they're going to be significant because they're giving them all names and stuff like that, but we don't know why. But they're delivering some cargo and they get caught in a storm and their plane goes down. Uh, right off the bat, great drama. It's like the opening of a movie where you just introduce all the characters and then something happens and then we cut to like the opening credits or something like that, and then we are brought to the next the next thing here. So we get a little bit of fun and games with Doug, Ramsey, and Kitty and Ilyana. JV says another plane crash. That's right. Here's our current X-Men roster. There's Colossus with his red, whatever, tunic. Not a tunic. But he's got blue pants this time. I think those must break or something like that whenever he, or maybe that's just a miscolor because you're going to be able to see the metal shine through once he turns into metal. Yeah, right here. And so we get a little bit of Days of Future Past. Important for us to have the Days of Future Past context because that's going to inform a lot of Rachel's decisions and actions through these two issues. And if you are only an Alpha Flight fan and you're coming into this because you like Alpha Flight and you've never read any X-Men, then you're going to be a little confused with her character. Um, Rogue accidentally bumps into Colossus and absorbs some of his powers. That's kind of cool. And then we get an effigy of Cyclops. Or maybe that's a real deal. I can't remember. It's been almost a week since I read these now. And then here we are in Calgary, Alberta. We're meeting the Alpha Flight team, and we go through a nice exposition page right here that tells us where, and this is very smartly done because it doesn't feel forced, but who are all these characters? What is their relationship to each other? And what are the events of the past couple of issues of drama that we need to know about? And so I like that. And then right away, we get the mystery. Something's happened to Snowbird. And man, Rachel comes in strong here and has to be stopped by the X-Men in order for her to calm down. I like Alpha Flight. I like all of these characters. I think they're very unique, and their interplay in these issues is great. Here's another one I was talking about wanting Power Pack Epic Collections. Well, I definitely want Alpha Flight Epic Collections as well. A series that has been coming out in omnibus form recently, so I think maybe once they finish selling those omnis, they'll bring it over to epics. That would be my hope, my hopes and dreams. Let's see here. So let's skip ahead a little bit. This is a good page. This double page spread in which Loki is conferring with all of these, like the high tier gods. Odin, of course, being in the middle there, and he's going to put humanity to a test to see how they respond to being given a gift. More interplay. None of this dialogue is boring. I thought that this was all great. And what a stark contrast to the previous issue, which I felt was all kind of corny. And it was meant to be corny because it was supposed to be kind of a corny story, fable or whatever. But now we get Claremont back into the real dialogue and such. One thing that if you look at Paul Smith's faces here, his style has changed to give everybody really long faces and long noses. And you can see it in Wolverine here. Usually he's got a squat round face, but Paul Smith really really accentuates the nose especially. Rachel seems to be quite a bit stronger than base Jean, especially in that scene. Definitely, and Xavier says that he's no match for her either. So yeah, she's definitely got raw power. Maybe she inherits that from her mother. Okay, we all know that North Star is gay. And then but I don't know if the writers had that in mind way back at this point. But a lot of the dialogue that, and maybe maybe it's intentional, maybe it's not. A lot of the dialogue points to him being gay even at this point here. It can be read. It's like a double meanings. A lot of it. So a lot of it can be read in a couple different ways, and so that's interesting. I don't know if that was intentional or not. There's a few double page spreads. I always find page spreads of buildings. They're either really great or they are kind of lackluster. And I find this one's lackluster. And that's partly because Paul Smith is, like I said, he's a minimalist with his details. He just kind of does the what he needs to in order to convey the information. And so this building, as it's supposed to look super impressive, kind of only looks like, well, I'm not sure. Could be the coloring as well, being bright, but it's supposed to be gold. And here, this is Cyclops. And you wouldn't know because he's not wearing his glasses, but also the face shape just doesn't fit Cyclops. I always envisioned him to be more of like a square jaw guy, not a long chin guy. And so again, this is Paul Smith with his really long faces. Kind of weird, but it is what it is. I feel like it even changes from the beginning of this issue to now. There, yeah, look at Rachel's face up there and Xavier in the middle. Again, long faces. Another cool spread. And these are all okay. So here's the deal: all of the people who were on that plane who crashed have been given a gift, and some of the gift is new powers, and some of their gifts are taking powers away. So, for instance, Cyclops, they took his power away, so he can see now. And the other people, the humans that were on the airplane, have been given extraordinary gifts of healing and design and all this kind of stuff to better humanity. One of the more interesting things here is um, Puck is cured of his dwarfism, which means he grows to an average person's height. Huh. And I like seeing him work out what that means for him, trying to figure out how to, because he's just so unfamiliar with that body. Rogue has her 80s workout gear look. Yeah, one of my favorite looks for Rogue, actually. I really like that. I think it, and I like that what they've done. They feel like Rogue has had really terrible hair up to this point. Never loved her hairstyles, but this hairstyle is good. Oh, the team splits up to take care of some things. Rogue has lost her power, so that means she can touch somebody. The first thing she does is kiss North Star, who's not impressed. And here is where we find out that Madeline Pryor is pregnant. A big reveal. Um, a big reveal in a miniseries that it's surprising that we actually have a few good moments in here that affect main continuity that make this um, two-part series quite essential to the overall story. And this is very confusing for Rachel. First, she thought, well, Jean Grey is my mom. But if she died, then before having kids, that means that she can't be my mom. So I guess Madeline Pryor's my mom. But wait a minute, they're having a boy? I'm not a boy, and I'm an only child. So what does that mean? Pretty sure Rogue doesn't have to kiss anyone, just part of her flirty personality while also demonstrating how she longs to be able to touch people without causing harm. Very true. I don't find that she's overly flirty at this point. That's more of a 90s Rogue thing because this Rogue is still very much traumatized from just her upbringing with Mystique and the just reconciling her powers. Oh yeah, let's keep on going here. We are introduced to the source of the power. They call it the fire fountain. We call it our magic fountain. It says, um, But whatever the light is here, it's been giving people powers, and they have the ability to shape the world as they see fit. And there's Heather, guardian of Alpha Flight. She goes in because she doesn't have any powers at this point of her story, and so she goes in to try and get some powers, and she comes back with this cool costume. The headdress kind of looks like Hawk Girl. Rachel Summers walked so Kyle Reese and Future Trunks could run. Yeah. So I don't know if you figured it out by this point, but it seems to be affecting all of the magic-based characters. Um, I figured it out before the big reveal, before the comic told us, but not at this point. I think it was in the second issue. But yeah, Shaman is dying. And that brings us to the second issue here. Another great wraparound cover. An unfortunate placed UPC box. I know that there's not really another place to put it, but I feel like maybe they thought it was going to go on the back cover because there's a perfect amount of room right at the frost giant's foot down in that bottom corner. They purposely didn't put any dying X-Men down there. So I feel like maybe that's what Paul Smith was trying to do. But somebody then said, "Oh no, it's got to go on the front cover." A nice recap page before we get into this adventure, which is good because it tells us the names of all of the new heroes or villains, whatever you want to call them, the humans that were on the plane with Scott and Madeline. And I wouldn't have known any of these names because if they did say it, they didn't make a big enough deal about it in the first issue. So, but now that I've read these, it actually helps a lot moving into this next issue because they start using their names quite a bit. So this issue, it says that it's inked by Bob Wyachek and friends. And you can definitely tell when the friends take over because again the inking style changes, but we'll point that out as we get through here. Interesting character here, Shaman's daughter, and I don't really know anything about her and other than what was read in these issues here. So again, bring on the Alpha Flight Epic collection so I can learn more about her. That would be great. Rachel doesn't know what to do because she's meeting her father for the first time. Because Cyclops hasn't been in the pages of X-Men, so now that he's showing up here, this is the perfect time for them to meet. Kind of a big moment, again, save for this miniseries, which is kind of cool. One thing that Kitty says here, where does she say it? I can't remember, but she says that she has to hold her breath when she phases, which is something that I'd never thought about it. Oh, yeah, maybe it's here. I have to phase. That'll slow me down. Uh, could be big trouble too. I have to become solid to take a breath. So I never thought about that before. So does she only stay in solid material for one breath's length? And what about other people that um she's phasing with? Like in a little bit here, we phase with Shaman's daughter. I can't remember her name. And with Rachel, she phases with Rachel right here. That's what it is. She phases with Rachel, but I never hear her say, "Rachel, hold your breath," as they phase through these rocks. It just kind of happens. I don't know, but that's kind of cool. New aspect of her power that I never really thought about before. There's so much. This particular scan has a lot of yellow in it, so the skin tones look more yellow, and the green drapes look very yellow. That's just they just need to be adjusted, I think. Here's another interesting thing too, and kind of one that I don't really agree with. The gift that Wolverine got, and in his words, he says, "I'm not crazy anymore." He the animal instincts or his berserker rages, that feeling is gone, and that's the gift. He's now more in control of his mental state or something like that. I don't know. But my question is, uh, would you really call him crazy? I don't think that even though he's like, I don't know, unpredictable, or he just goes on these berserkers or something. I don't think that I'd call that a mental illness, but that's kind of how they're painting it here. But he's been relieved of that mental illness. And then later on in the issue, he says at the very end, when everybody loses their gifts, he's like, "Oh man, I'm crazy again." Like he says that, like right out, "I'm crazy again." Like what? No, that's not. I expect more from Chris from that, right? He's been doing such a good job of painting Wolverine as as a person, maybe with some issues with aggressiveness and such, but not crazy. And maybe crazy is just the way Wolverine is talking about it himself. Like you're not giving himself enough credit, but kind of strange that they use that particular language. Yeah, aggressive, not crazy. And JV says, I always thought he had anger management issues. Yeah, right. I liked seeing Kitty and Wolverine interact now that they have this big bond between them. It's very cool. And thanks to Wolverine with his expert tracking skills, he's tracked down Snowbird. And look at these panels. But yeah, like this one right here, all of the detail in the grass and the shadows and everything. Like this is like Paul Wyachek, I feel like inks Paul Smith, very true to Paul Smith's drawing style. And that is true, like so if Paul's being how do I explain it? If Paul's being more simplistic, then Bob is not one of those inkers that's just going to come in and add extra shading or whatever, like a Joe Sinnott. He's just not going to do that. But then you have this inker, whoever this one is, and this one looks like they've added a lot more details into just the folds on the fabric and such. And I don't know, maybe that's Bob as well. Can't really tell, but it definitely looks different. More great interchanges. Northstar does not want to dance with the beautiful woman. He eventually does reluctantly. And finally, toward the very end, Loki steps in to show that he was kind of behind everything. Oh, pardon me. I'm very tired. Look how short Wolverine is here. And it's not just the fact that he's drawn short, but whatever that guy's name is, one of the guys from the airplane, he's grown super big. Like that's one of his gifts was very, very tall stature. And Cyclops. So I do like the struggle with morality here. Um, they've been given powers to reshape the world to make it a utopia. Very specific powers that if they all work together, they'll be able to achieve a peaceful planet. However, it would be at the cost of all of the magic users in the world, and especially like Ilyana. And I was sort of surprised that Colossus took the stance of, well, I know it'll affect my sister, but it's for the good of the many, so we need to go ahead with it. And then Kitty's on the other side saying, "No, she's my best friend. I'm not letting anything happen to her." So I surprised Colossus. You surprised me on that one. Some nice strong art all the way through. Here we go. Finally, Loki shows his face. Um, or I guess he's actually shown his face before this, but yeah, he sends the frost giants and kind of tries to throw chaos into each of these scenes so that X-Men will fall. But all of a sudden now we have a different inker again. This stuff has just better body proportions and better action, better details. So I think a strong inker has come in at this point to clean things up and work things a little bit differently. And Rogue touches Loki's face. So that's interesting. Doesn't seem to have any effect on him though. Probably maybe because he's a god rather than any sort of mortal being. But I like this inker a lot, whoever this is. This is a nice scene where you can really feel what Madeline Pryor's feelings are. She's not a bad person. She gives up her own freedom essentially to save that of one of the people she doesn't even really know. And so the day is saved. And we end strong with one of these black and white panels pages. And X-Men have made a new villain. The last word goes to Puck, and I like how because I think they all have a lot to deal with, but bringing back his dwarfism is can't be easy for him. But he says, "So that's the cross I choose to bear. So do us a favor, Loki, and take off, eh? We ain't interested." There's a good Canadian phrase. Take off, eh? Curtis, before I heard you mentioning the inking a couple of years ago, I never noticed it, but now I always notice it and appreciate it even more when it's done well. Yeah, it's an art. It's an art form, and a lot of people don't realize a lot of the skill that goes into it. It's not just tracing people's lines. There's you can drastically change the way things look. So I'm glad that you noticed that, and I hope that it's making things more enjoyable as you look through the art. I find that with comics, there are people who take their time and look at all the pictures in detail, and then there are people who like glance over the page and absorb the composition or the flow of action and stuff, and maybe even subconsciously, and then just go ahead and just read the words and don't even really look at the pictures after that. But it all works together for comics. Okay, and then here's the moment we were all waiting for, where Cyclops meets up with um I don't think she's going by Phoenix at this point, right? It's just Rachel, and she decides not to reveal to Cyclops that they are related. So that's a story for another day. And that gets us through half of our books. We've got a few more to go. X-Men number 193, a special double-sized issue. And take a look at the corner box there. Cyclops is there, and so is Storm. And is this consistent? Because Yeah, the issues before this have only really had 4 heads. I guess it changes. Sometimes you get like this one has all of the new mutants on it as well. Sometimes it's just 4, sometimes it's more. And I think that let's see here, what is the next issue? Oh yeah, so yeah, maybe that's going to be a consistent thing for a little while. Storm and Cyclops are going to be on the top there. So, a special 100th anniversary issue for the all new, all different X-Men. So, the because number 93 was the first issue of, what was known then just known as X-Men, um, with this new team of mutants that spun out of giant size X-Men number 1. So, 100 issues later, that means, we've also read 100 issues. Um, plus a lot more because we've been doing some minis and annuals or whatever. So I don't know what the count is. Actually, I do know what the count is. Hold on a second. Because I've got my handy spreadsheet. Where are we right now? As of the end of this week, we'll have read 141 issues. No, 100. Where are we? 142. 142 issues at the end of week 20. That's not bad. Where did my screen go? Okay, and I think that bringing back Thunderbird, and yes, I know it's not actually Thunderbird, but just putting him on the cover there is perfect for an anniversary because that was one of the watershed moments in those first few issues when the team was brand new, was the death of Thunderbird. And so, why is he on the cover here? We don't know. We also see Firestar in the background, and I can't remember which Hellion that is over there. Um, I've never bothered to learn all of their names individually. But the other thing they do is bring back Banshee. We haven't seen Banshee in ages. And here they are, Banshee's fighting a dead former teammate. Oh, James says eventually Puck's dwarfism is retconned to involve an evil wizard and a magic sword. That is so comic book. That's hilarious. So the inking on this one is Dan Green. But I feel like Dan Green really pulled out all the stops because he does some really nice, moody work, especially in these opening pages. Really, really great. So good job, Dan. Good job, John. Now, Professor X has been missing for several issues. It seems really it's just been not even one issue. But for us, we just had the annual and the two-part Alpha Flight story, which um no, I guess Xavier wasn't there. I was going to say he was there, but he was actually in the fairy tale story in the annual, so that doesn't count. Anyway, I love this. Callisto is the one who dragged him, his beaten body to the Morlock tunnels. That was the cliffhanger at the end of the previous issue. So here we are. And they've taken off his clothes and put him in these leather straps with spikes. It's like, what? Why? I don't know. Just for kicks? But man, you can tell we're in the 80s now because that's like, the hair metal leather and spikes look. That was all the rage. And so there we are. Um, so Xavier died, apparently. He got literally beaten to death. And the Morlocks used their healer to bring him back to life. And that's treated just as an aside in the dialogue that they say, "Oh yeah, yeah, you actually were dead technically, but we brought you back." Like that's a big deal. Um, Xavier's body's been through a lot of punishment over the years. Yeah, right. You're right. You're right. It's punk. It's punk rock. Um, especially like kind of British invasion stuff, and that's definitely what I meant to say. So thanks for the correction there, James. You're right. And man, they have a train down there. I know that the Morlock tunnels were abandoned trains, but they actually still have a locomotive, and that's how they can get back and forth. That's pretty cool. We see Sunder here, and I could have sworn that Sunder died in a previous issue, but maybe not. Apparently not. Or um maybe he got better with that healer. So here's an important panel right here because this plays into an upcoming issue. Annalee's kids got shot because they're mutants, and it's like that's a brutal panel, and they're just carrying the dead, lifeless bodies. It's like nobody really takes action on it, and I thought that was kind of weird. Like, not neither the X-Men nor the Morlocks. Um, okay, we saw this character hinted at. He made a brief cameo appearance in the past, and but he is John Proudstar's little brother James, and he's wearing John's uniform to try and get revenge on the person who killed him, and he blames Xavier because um, great comment. Xavier goes toe to toe with Phoenix, but gets killed by some teenagers. Yes, exactly. That's what I'm talking about. um, he blames Xavier because Xavier brought him to the X-Men and then sent him on a mission, and the very first mission got him killed. So it's like, what was even the point? And he's very mad about that, and he's joined the Hellions. So the Hellions have not just the regular people that we've met before, but now they have James Proudstar and they have Angelica Jones, who is Firestar. And there she is right there. She's dating one of them. And um, she doesn't get to wear the typical costume, but we're going to see some more of her action in a little bit. So here we are in the danger room, and X-Men are training. And here's the first appearance of Shadowcat's new costume, which gets kind of defined a little bit more over the years, especially when she moves into Excalibur. She loses the mask eventually. I think the mask looks a little silly on her here. Um, but yeah, so that's kind of cool to see that come out here for the 100th issue. Seems everybody's kind of getting little costume redesigns. Not Wolverine, but yeah, we've already seen Rogue's new um, black leotard outfit, workout outfit. Nightcrawler stays the same. Nightcrawler and Wolverine don't really go through major costume changes kind of ever, kind of like Batman. James was in New Mutants before this as a Hellion. Yeah, that's right. So I like this here. Warlock is here in the team, and oh, is it Warlock that does it? I think no, I don't remember. But anyway, somebody changes the danger room to look like Leela Cheney's homeworld, which they had just visited in the pages of New Mutants as well. In fact, the New Mutant Annual is where Cannonball and Lila Cheney kind of meet and start their relationship. So, and this is a great moment. I love this here, where Xavier comes in wearing his ripped up leather left over from when he was with the Morlocks. And it calls back to a scene, a very specific scene where I think it's at the end of that New Mutants annual because Cannonball dresses up in kind of all leather and such. Um, because of Lila Cheney's influence. and he shows up, and Xavier says something to him, and now Cannonball's throwing it back in his face. While appreciate the need for self-expression, we are a respectable school, not a collection of ragamuffins. This requires that certain standards be maintained. In future, please dress accordingly. I love it. Everybody laughs at that. It's a great bit of levity. Shadowcat keeps the mask, says Lance, but it is more like a domino mask later, but more subtle. Oh, that's right. I kind of forgot that she did keep the mask, but you're right. Now that I think about it, it's just way better than just the black bar that they have right here. So it blends in a little bit better. Okay, Storm is on her journey of self-realization, and she is heading back to her homeland of Kenya. And the journey she's all her story is going to come to head in a little bit, kind of in one of the issues we're going to read in this coming week. Let's skip ahead here and look at this. Some more moody inking here. Not sure who the inker is, but it kind of doesn't look like Dan Green, because Dan Green doesn't usually put as much like feathering into some of the characters' hair and that kind of stuff. But it looks cool. I like this one. Uh, Let me see here. Where are we? I gotta remember where we are in the story. Oh yeah, Xavier's under attack. One of the things we've been exploring through this, through the issue before this, and then this one here, is that Nightcrawler is technically the team leader now, and I don't remember the conversation where that's handed over to him. I can't remember. I don't believe that I read anything about like Xavier saying, "Nightcrawler, you should take over." But he's kind of in charge here, and he doesn't know what he's doing, or he believes he doesn't know what he's doing. So this is good, because I feel like recently Nightcrawler has been given the sideline, and I've mentioned it, like he's been stuck as the medical person, like a doctor, treating everybody's wounds, and that takes him out of service because he's like just staying with the infirmed. And like, come on, let's get this guy some action. So by making him field leader, that does that. However, he's just telling people to go places, and he doesn't actually go there himself, other than just teleporting people places. But he really struggles with his own insecurities and whether or not he should be the leader of the team. Nightcrawler is in my top 5 X-Men, but he's an awful leader. This mini arc is great development for him going into Excalibur down the road. Um, yeah, yeah, exactly. And not everyone's cut out to be a leader. Not everyone can be a good leader. And I think he's finding this out. And it's funny that, no one ever asks Wolverine to be the leader. That's because he knows that he's not. He would be a great person to lead in the field, but he's not great with these, personal dynamics between people and such. So that would not work out very well. It's a cool picture of Wolverine punching the shadow, because he knows that that Jane's Proudstar is there. Eventually, Jane's goes by the name Warpath and joins up with New Mutants, and eventually X-Force becomes a big player in X-Force. But he's not at that point quite yet. They rescue Banshee. Man, poor Banshee, he's not getting better. His voice has not come back. Eventually it will, but we're not there yet. These issues, I think, for the most part, some of them went on for just a bit too long. They didn't need to be full double-size issues. But nice to see Colossus let loose here. And Firestar has her moment of, maybe I'm teaming with the wrong people, that Rogue had, in her early days as well. Banshee feels like the uncle to the X-Men at this point. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, and Nightcrawler being an Uber service and transporting everyone everywhere. So true. Some nice lighting. I like that. So here's something weird. Wolverine smoking a cigarette. Usually in comic books and portrayed in movies and stuff, cigarettes are for bad guys and cigars are for the tough guys, the good guys. Like the Thing, Nick Fury, and usually Wolverine, they're all smoking cigars. Usually we don't see any of the good guys smoking cigarettes. Usually it's usually shorthand for this guy's a bad guy. So it's kind of odd to see Wolverine smoking a cigarette. Here's a big moment for Rachel. She's been keeping her history as a hound a secret, and a hound is what she was called in her future, her present day timeline. And she was used against her will to hunt down, using her telepathic powers, hunt down other mutants. And now her instructions are, hey, use your powers to find another mutant. And she can't do it because of her past trauma, but she's not telling anybody why she can't do it or what her past trauma is. So she just looks like she's letting the team down. And that's a dynamic that has to get played out. And here we have James wrestling with his own decisions. And eventually he decides that he cannot kill Xavier. And Xavier, being Xavier, welcomes him in with open arms, even though he just, he was just James just tried to kill him. But Rogue is there, and Rogue had the same treatment not too long ago. They offer him a spot on the team, but he's not going to take it. His place is with the Hellions, he says, and so he'll just have to hang out with the Hellions for a little while. And same with Firestar. Firestar, who looks very similar to Jean Grey or Madeline Pryor with all of her long red hair. But it's Firestar. She's offered a spot on the team as well, but she also doesn't accept. So the team doesn't grow at all. And we get an epilogue that's going to set up the next issue with Nimrod. And there we go. That is our double-sized issue. Man, we just had 4 double-sized issues. There's a lot to talk about, and we still have 2 issues to go. So we're going to have to speed it up just a little bit here. Uncanny X-Men 194. Really kind of a weird cover. I feel like it's both dynamic and a little bit awkward at the same time because the characters just seem a little stiff, especially Nimrod, maybe because he doesn't really have a neck or anything like that. Um, and then Rogue at the bottom there is looking a little strange. I wonder why. We'll find out. I like this opening panel with all of these horizontal panels of the Juggernaut walking closer and closer, and we can see like the traffic moving in the background, and the other background characters are moving at their own pace as well, which is kind of cool. So I like how that's laid out. And then Juggernaut's back in town. The last time we saw, oh hey, look, Steve Leialoha's name is on there as finishes. Last time we saw Juggernaut was the big bar brawl between him and Colossus a few issues back, and he didn't have his costume at all in that issue. He was just like we see him here, just fighting in his civvies. But Juggernaut's back in town, and that's big news just because he's a villain, but he's just literally just walking around. And I really like the way Juggernaut is portrayed here. Um, he's not really a bad guy. He doesn't have any um, high and lofty goals of global domination or anything like that. He's not a thief or a mad scientist. he's just kind of dumb. So he's easily susceptible. So he gets partnered up a lot of the times with people that are using him. But in this day, he's just literally minding his own business. So um, everybody finds out that Juggernaut's back in town. Rogue's story is starting to. Oh, look at this! A bad guy smoking a cigarette. Weren't we just talking about that? Exeter says, while reading the Firestar miniseries, I was expecting her to end up going to Xavier's school, but she didn't. I'm curious to see what she does in the future. Yeah, I mean, she does eventually join a super team through the 90s, some of the 90s, but it's not the one that you expect. And then I don't know what happens to her. I have no idea where she is these days. Okay, nice story with Storm, and one person's like, the queen is back, the goddess, the Wind Rider has returned. So looks like Juggernaut's just gonna like open a bank account or something, and that's all it is. But then he gets attacked by this new Nimrod, which is a new version of a Sentinel. Terrible design, not one that is particularly pleasant to look at or anything like that. Um, and I feel like they were expecting him to be a bigger deal than he actually was, because they definitely featured him heavily in like the cartoon, and he comes back several times through the 90s, and he's got trading cards and the toys and whatever, and then he just kind of disappears. And was like, wasn't that great of a character after all. So the name Nimrod is a biblical name named after a warlord. And so I think that's kind of why they've given him this name here. But um, the other meaning of Nimrod is kind of like a moron, because at one point in a Bugs Bunny cartoon, Bugs Bunny calls Elmer Fudd a Nimrod just to be funny. But that's kind of where the name. That's why people associate Nimrod with moron, because of Bugs Bunny in the 1950s. But that's not how it's being used here. So here we are. The team shows off some good skills here. They work together well with their powers. And there's a very important moment coming up in a little bit here where Rogue, um, yeah, Wolverine's being tossed all around. Everybody tries their individual attacks on Nimrod, and nothing seems to work. And so at one point, Kitty naturally, like willingly gives her powers over to Rogue. And so Rogue can phase through the debris to save the other people. Oh, okay. James says, I love Nimrod's design. And in this era, he's really interesting as a robot trying to be a human. Um, yeah, we haven't really explored that at all yet in these comics. Nimrod is in the age of Krakoa. Well, that's good. Even has his own Marvel Legends figure. Is it one of the Build-A-Figures? Is he like really, really big? Okay, here we go. Rogue says, sorry guys, gonna have to do this. So she touches the skin of Colossus and Nightcrawler. So now she has Colossus, Nightcrawler, and Shadowcat's powers all together. And we were just talking about this the other day, if she can combine powers. And here is a definitive moment where, yes, she can. So she gets the strength of Colossus, the teleportation powers, and the phasing all in one, and is able to use that while the team wasn't able to take down Nimrod individually, and not even really working effectively as a team. It takes one person with all the powers to be able to use them all at once. And I love this moment at the end where Juggernaut is expecting the X-Men to fight him next, but Rogue just says, "We saved your butt, bozo. Uh, trust you to make us regret it. We ain't the law. This fracas wasn't your fault. Better vamoose, though, before the authorities show or the Avengers show." So he takes off because he doesn't want to fight them either. He just wants to mind his own business, which is like, good. I'm glad they let him go. And then we have a little epilogue setting up some of the future as well. So we're building to something. We're building to something big. And we're approaching the 200th issue, so we can tell that things are going to come ahead probably in a little bit, and a little bit more building, and that's good because I feel like Claremont is not like, I don't know, it doesn't seem to have a focus with the issues right now. There's a lot of um, there's none of the real team building going on here, or focus of what the team is trying to accomplish or progress. It's just reactionary to a bunch of different things, and it's not really going anywhere. So I think we need a little bit of a shakeup, which I think we're going to get in a little bit. Okay, last issue we're talking about today is Uncanny X-Men 195. And this is the second part to a two-part story that starts in Power Pack number 12. So I encourage you to read that before you do this one. I really like this Bill Sienkiewicz cover. There's something just about the natural anatomy of Wolverine that makes it quite appealing. I think it's good. Is this issue to help boost Power Pack sales? I don't know if it was to help boost the sales. I think sales were doing fine for them. This is only issue 12, so it was probably just more to bring awareness that the title exists in the first place. Power Pack began popping up all over the place to help boost those, to gain awareness for the sales. Um, Eventually, Franklin Richards joins the team, and I don't know if that was done to boost sales from Fantastic Four fans, but whatever. So I mentioned the one panel where Annalise children get shot. And in that, and so that story plays out heavily here because in the Power Pack issue, Annalie decides to kidnap the Power Pack and make those children her own children. And Power Pack don't want to have anything to do with it. Kitty and Nightcrawler help them escape. And so then they go back home. And this is them back at home, sleeping in the bed with their parents. And then there's a lightning storm, and they wake up, and the parents are like, "Who the heck are you? We don't have any children." Um, and so we have to, then the Power Pack are on the run. They don't know what's going on here, and I really sympathize for them at this point. And it's like they're they're kids. They don't know who to turn to. They don't have the resources to figure this out themselves, and they just kind of end up shivering in an alley until they remember, oh yeah, wait a minute, we're superheroes. So they go back down to the Morlocks tunnels because they figure out that the Morlocks are the ones responsible for all of this because they have a person who can change memories called, and that person's name is Dreamer. All of their stuff um, has been moved downstairs. In fact, we'll get to that part of the story, but the character Mask, who can rearrange faces, rearranges their faces so they do not look like normal children anymore, and makes them afraid to go up to the surface. So now they're kind of stuck being um, down in the Morlocks tunnels. The issues involving Power Pack are usually always good, honestly. Yeah, that the series is great too. It's written off a lot of times as just being a series for kids and stuff because it features kids, but it's actually, I really like it. I think it's a mistake to look at this era of Claremont in terms of long arcs. It's more pointillist, single issues, single stories that slowly build out the world and slow burn character arcs. Pretty soon, those simmering elements start to boil over. That's true. And that's what I really like about, like, let's say, Tom DeFalco's Fantastic Four. Similar approach. I just feel like it doesn't have the same because it doesn't have the same flow as what we're used to, especially doing this reading like it is now. So um, it's hard. It's hard to switch gears like that all of a sudden. Rachel, again, she's become a pretty prominent member of the X-Men now. Rachel's using her telepathy to share the location of the kids with the team, and they go to help her out. Um, nice backgrounds here. I like all of the detail that they're putting in here. My theory is Claremont was looking at Love and Rockets at this time. Wow, you know what? You're probably right. That's uh that's a good observation. I love that series. People should read that if you haven't. Louis Simonson is one of the best writers for kids comics in the biz, much better than most with writing them in a believable way. Yeah, and still like giving them agency, but still treating them as kids. Uh, the dialogue is great. Yeah, it's just a fun book. An all-out brawl. Here's another interesting little bit with Rogue's powers. What happens when Leech touches Rogue? Does her power does she have the powers while Leech is there? Who knows? It says that it just kind of cancels out the powers, but then Leech um, kind of goes unconscious a little bit, so we're not exactly sure. But I guess he loses his ability to take away powers, but then she also loses her powers because she says she's fighting like a normal woman at this point. So she does not have the Carol Danvers powers right now. So I don't know. Very interesting the way they portray that. In the end, Callisto, who actually isn't that bad of a person, Callisto is the level-headed one here that says, Annalie, what are you thinking? We got to send these kids back. You cannot keep these children. Power Pack are now our friends, just like the X-Men. And that's our issue. And it says to be continued in Secret Wars #2 because they're getting a message from Magneto. And how does Rachel know who Magneto is? Because I don't think that she has encountered Magneto yet. But anyway, I guess we'll find out. So the bonus reading for next week, let's pull that up here. The bonus reading for Monday and Tuesday, today and tomorrow, I've picked ROM 65 and 66. X-Men kind of they are in those issues, but they're not really relevant. Um, so if you want to read something more relevant, you can read Secret Wars. I think it's a 9-issue series or whatever. You can try to pack those in. I just didn't want to have just a couple of random issues of Secret Wars. So I decided not to put any of it in there because it wouldn't all fit. Then you can see we're going to go through the long shot miniseries later on. And then the regular reading for this week is Uncanny X-Men 196 to 198, plus the 4-issue Nightcrawler miniseries. And that takes us right up to the end of this epic collection. So there we go. We're going to finish off yet another book by the end of this week. Very exciting. And that's all I have for you today. I'm going to sign off and get on with some other stuff that I need to do. But I appreciate all of you, James and Lance and JV and Exeter, and all of you people who are in the chat, chatting with me and piping in with your comments. Great insights from some of you, and thanks for correcting me where I make mistakes. Don't hold it against you. I need to. I can't remember everything, and I'm glad that you all do. So yeah, thanks a lot. It's been great chatting with you. Tomorrow I'll do my live stream again. If I get a book from Marvel today, because so far they haven't sent me something for this week, so I might not actually have anything to open up. So just stay tuned. Tomorrow we'll see what happens. Other than that, I don't have anything on my schedule YouTube wise for the rest of the week, which is probably fine because I've got to get some other stuff done. But thanks everybody. I hope you have a great week. Maybe I'll see you tomorrow. Maybe I won't. Take care.